I just want to say I agree with David that we can and will find the direct measure of disadvantage with more work, and I don't think it'll be a very long way off. And in that respect, I don't think that we're, on that part of the argument, I don't think we're disagreeing. In other words, I'm not, well, on the question of admissions, I don't think, of appointments of staff, I didn't quite understand the point we made, but I think I would concede, if that's what's required to make the argument, I would concede that when we look at staff members and we look at the appointment, we can easily compensate, much more easily compensate for disadvantage, and we can take that into account. We don't simply have to use race.
Because it's individualized process.
Because, yeah, but I'm not sure that that's essential, because we don't disagree on the core issue, which is disadvantage can be measured. We don't yet have the tools, but we're working on it. We'll get there. I think we'll get there in a year or two. The question I have, the challenge which no one has responded to, is, let's say we've sorted that out. My concern is that we will end up in a much worse situation. If we get rid of race and we only use disadvantage, we will have a bimodal distribution of students here, of whom the white students will be excellent and pass immediately with no support. The black students will have a 50% dropout rate. 50% will never get there, which is not efficient for the country either. And will be in academic learning.
Is that because you want black students to be like white students, which goes back to Neville's point?
That's because
because you've got a conception of what is excellent and a conception of standard which is Eurocentric and is seriously contested. And so long as we have that, we're always going to have this problem. What you want is a non-racial Oxford.
What I want is that the distribution of people who pass the exam, I don't know if that's Eurocentric excellence.
Well, the question is what's tested in the exam,
that's
which
right,
is what,
yeah.
It's another matter.
Yeah, we can debate that too, but I'm happy to accept that we have a system that has a certain kind of exams and that we're not going to change that quickly. The outcome I want is that the distribution of people who pass the exams should be non-racial. It should not be primarily white. And to get that, we need to select black students who are not disadvantaged.
All right, I know that you both Neville, I'm going to come to Archbishop, but they seem to be desperate. Yes, David.
So first of all, I haven't seen the data on this, but I'd be surprised if we had a bimodal distribution, as Dr. Price suggests. I mean, when I look at my classes, there are outstanding black students. I have difficulty believing that they would not get into UCT without some kind of preference. So that's the first point. The second
it's hugely offensive of them to suggest that they wouldn't.
Exactly. And the second point is, if it is true that in a year or two's time we would get alternative methods of admissions, then what I would suggest is, let's make the principle stand now. Let's spurn racial classification and admittance on the basis of race. First of all, that will put more pressure on the university to find these alternatives and to find them promptly. And secondly, the costs of that interim period of a year or two wouldn't be that great in any event.
Neville, I know you want to say something, and I want the other two.
Yes, thank you.
Up to the audience.
This may appear to be coming at the same problem from a very different angle. The university still has red bays and yellow bays in which people come. And are there blue bays? Oh, I didn't even know that. In other words, even where there is no racial classification, you have a class classification, status classification. Do away with that. Start there. It sounds trivial.
What happens when I park in your bay?
Hold on. It sounds trivial.
No,
but I'm saying to you that you shape people's consciousness.
Yes.
By doing that kind of thing. It's like ticking a box. And if you go down to the supermarket in Rondebosch, Riverside Centre, you go into the parking garage, you pay, there's no red bay, no yellow bay. You think differently once you're there in the marketplace, as it were. Now, so I want to start there, and then I want to make a second point, which also seems to be irrelevant, but is terribly relevant, especially after what Sizwe said. A few years ago, we had to literally hound the fertility clinic out of a position where they were advertising for black, colored, and Indian sperm. We at PRAESA had to hound them out of that position on the grounds that this is a racist practice. Now, I don't want to go into the detail. I'm just trying to show you how entrenched these ideas actually are at this university, never mind any other university. I'm sure it's worse than Stellenbosch. The point I'm making is that it's not a technical issue. if you are asking people to tick boxes whether they identify themselves or whether you identify them, this is the kind of race thinking that you are entrenching in the heads of people, because that is where they are. They're not miraculous. They haven't overcome racial thinking. And I want to stress the point that I've made earlier, but I want to stress it once more. It's about what values people are imbibing, what values are being inculcated, what knowledge and so on. Not only knowledge about Europe, but Africa, about Asia, about Latin America and so on. What values are being inculcated. Whether somebody is white or green doesn't matter, man. It's what values that person is imbibing at this university.
Are you suggesting, therefore, that this kind of process of admission subverts that kind of vision?
I've just told you.
That's what you're saying.
I've just told
Now,
you.
can I ask you, Archbishop, how do you respond to that?
My response is getting back to that great theologian, Thomas Aquinas, who said that the morality of an act is in intention. It's in intention. I don't believe that the intention of this university is to propagate racism. It's to deal with a situation that is before us. And again, in my book of words, when you are confronted with a dilemma such as we have, you ask the question, which is the lesser of the two evils? And it seems to me that we are wanting to build a society in South Africa where we have all the sectors being able to have an entry into the university so that they can take their part in the building of this nation. And there's no doubt about it in terms of demographics of our country. The majority of people are black like me. And therefore, it will be absurd to have a university where it's the minority that benefited in the past which continue to do so. I recognize that this is an interim measure in terms of the principle of lesser of two evils.
And for how long, Archbishop?
Sorry?
For how long?
Well, the point is, I made my statement that we have got to change the educational system in the first place. And I think that no black student wants to be categorized in this kind of way. In fact, I've heard some saying that we actually want to move away from this. So it's something that we need to be engaging and addressing the dilemma we find ourselves in our country.
Thank you. I know I want to give you the last chance before I open up here. Please. Sorry, you wanted to say something? Sizwe?
Yes.
Didn't you want?
Yes, thanks so much. Just to respond to one of the, because I also put a challenge across which I don't think was adequately answered, and that is, if not race, then what? And essentially the practical problems associated with race, and then the motivations and the appointments contention was raised. But if we must accept the appointments, then similarly, if we can't find a better practical method, then we must also accept the race. So I'd put that back on Professor Benatar. And then in the practical contention, Professor Benatar raised, in fact, you asked him a question and you said, what would you use? And the only real answer he gave was schools.
And what's wrong? Well, he didn't only, but what would be wrong with that?
Can I say what's wrong with that?
Yes.
There are a number of very real problems with that. Number one is you can't list every single school in South Africa and give it a rating system and then give it a sort of percentage point, 2.1% for this school because it's kind of near to a city and 2.1 for that school. So what you essentially end up doing is saying, look, township schools, rural schools, Model C schools. But there's intense differentiation within the school system. So some township schools have average pass rates which are higher than Model C schools and vice versa. The next thing you can do, and this is where I think we should go. So let me give the alternative which we haven't heard. And this is what's being used in a lot of the research that's being done in British universities. And that is the key indicator should be average pass rates, along with some of the other indicators. So what you look at is
school.
At school. So you look at a school and you look at its average pass rate, and you see how much a student has actually succeeded over and above that average pass rate. So if I come from a rural school and my average pass rate is 20% and I'm getting 60%, I'm on a similar footing to someone who gets 80% at a private school. And Not necessarily, but I'm just...
And you're
I'm just
saying that's easier,
So
that's an
what
easier
I'm saying
system than
is-
Professor Benatar?
What I'm saying is, given the research that's been done and given the disadvantage, the average pass rate system is probably the best system we have, given the differentiation in the school system.
All right. Let me, I'm going to take 3 or 4 questions at a time, so the floor is open. I'll just, yes, please. Can you be brief so that we can get everybody in?
Thanks, Chair. My name is Dalton Jacobs from Suriname. I just want to ask one question to the other speaker that is opposing vehemently the issue of racial admissions. I just want to ask, in a society like South Africa, where capital accumulation has vehemently been used as basis of advancing a particular race, it's been racially based. And now, as far as skills are concerned, that there are no people who are, as doctors, who are able to go to Kumbu, Kamtoboa, and so forth, who are ultimately white, some of them, and most of those who are black are not necessarily not being there because there are few doctors, some of them that are black. How do you think that we can avert the situation of having lesser doctors or lesser technicians or lesser whatever the case might be in society without including university to de-racialize based on that?
At this university, I work at the international level in science. I want to take students at this university and turn them into people who compete internationally at the highest level, who will be recognized as the international community as people who can make contributions in science that transform the way we think. Okay? Now, from this viewpoint, the question of disadvantage is irrelevant. If you send a scientific paper in to say, by the way, I'm a disadvantaged person, please treat this paper carefully, you will get laughed at. This is a code word for saying this is a substandard paper. So the fundamental question, I think, are the primary values of this university academic or political? And that is where NEPI made a huge mistake. NEPI substituted political values for academic values. If the university is not going to stand up for academic values, nobody is going to stand up for academic values. And the question is a very, very simple one. Can you contribute when we've helped you to the highest level international thought, or can you not? We want to help disadvantaged people, but in the end, that should not be the first priority. The first priority is, are you academically up to the job that this university is about?
I'm from UWC Peter LaRue.
Doesn't matter, we won't hold that against you.
Thank you. The problem of the argument that we just heard is that the person who gets 60% at a rural school where he possibly only one who passes will get a much better essay or paper written when he does his PhD than the guy who has 80% from a very good school. So I think the school-based system is clearly one that can be used, and it's available already. You know the average pass rates, every student you know from where he comes, and we've proposed that as the basis for funding instead of using the race basis for funding for universities, because that would mean that universities that take students from rural schools that are badly prepared will get more funding. At the moment, UWC have far more students from there, but we get less funding than you do, because even though your students predominantly come from ROC schools.
Thank you.